Hello guys. Welcome back to my channel and to another amazing fanfic story. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Every like shows your support and gives me the motivation to bring you more fanfic videos and updates regularly. Now, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into today's story. What if Kushina returned and exposed Konoha's darkest secrets? For 12 years, there had been nothing but darkness. No sound, no light, no time. Then suddenly, thump, a heartbeat echoed through an ancient underground chamber. Thump, another. Cracks spread across a massive crystal cocoon hidden deep beneath the ruins of the former Uzushiogakure. A woman's hand burst through. Red chakra exploded into the air. The crystal shattered. Kushina Uzumaki fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Her body trembled. Her memories returned in fragments. The Nine Tails. Minato. A newborn baby. Naruto. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Naruto. Her voice echoed through the empty sanctuary. The last thing she remembered was protecting her son. Yet somehow she was alive. Slowly she stood and examined the ancient chamber. Strange sealing formulas covered every wall. At the center stood a weathered stone tablet. Kushina approached it carefully. The tablet contained an emergency Uzumaki technique. A forbidden seal designed to preserve a clan member on the brink of death. It had activated automatically when she and Minato were struck by the Nine Tails. The seal had saved her life. But at a terrible cost. 12 years had passed. 12 years. Her legs nearly gave out. Naruto was no longer a baby. He was a child growing up without his parents. A mother's worst nightmare. Suddenly she felt something. A faint connection. The remnants of the bond between the former Jinchuriki and her son. The sensation was weak. But it existed. Naruto was alive. Relief washed over her. Then came something else. Pain. Loneliness. Sadness. The emotions flowing through that connection were so strong that Kushina froze. No. Her hands clenched. She could feel years of isolation. Years of rejection. Years of suffering. Something was very wrong. Kushina's chakra surged violently. The ground cracked beneath her feet. What happened to my son? For the next several days she searched the sanctuary. The ruins contained hidden records left behind by the Uzumaki clan. Ancient scrolls. Sealing techniques. Historical documents. And buried among them were reports gathered by surviving Uzumaki spies decades ago. Information networks. Emergency communication seals. Records that had continued collecting information long after the clan's destruction. Kushina spent hours reading. Then her expression darkened. One report mentioned growing tensions inside Konoha after the Nine Tails attack. Another referenced political factions competing for influence. Then she found a recent record. A report describing how the Nine Tails Jinchuriki was treated by villagers. Her hands shook. The parchment crumpled. Naruto. The reports spoke of whispers. Fear. Hatred. Isolation. Her son had become a target for the village's grief. The same village Minato had died protecting. For a long time Kushina simply sat there. Silent. Then she stood. Her eyes burned with determination. A mother was coming home. Far away, hidden within a cave illuminated by a single torch, a masked man suddenly paused. The man known to the world as Toby looked up sharply. He felt a familiar chakra. One he had not sensed in over a decade. Impossible. His lone Sharingan widened. Kushina. For the first time in years, the masked man looked genuinely shocked. And somewhere deep inside him, beneath the mask of Obito Uchiha, old memories stirred. Rain fell across a forgotten canyon. Hidden within a cavern, the leader of a shadow network stood silently before a flickering flame. Obito Uchiha had spent years believing the past was dead. Then he felt it. A chakra signature he could never mistake. Kushina Uzumaki. Alive. For several minutes he stood motionless. Memories flooded back. The days before the Nine Tails attack. The woman who welcomed him into her home when he was still a cheerful young shinobi. The laughter. The kindness. The family he had once admired. How? Obito whispered. Zetsu emerged from the shadows. Something wrong. Obito ignored him. If Kushina was alive, everything could change. She knew things. She had connections to Minato. And if she discovered the truth about the attack 12 years ago, war would follow. Meanwhile, Kushina approached Konoha. The village walls appeared on the horizon. For a moment she simply stared. This had once been home. The place where she met Minato. The place where Naruto was born. The place where everything had fallen apart. She tightened her grip on her travel cloak. I've come back. A powerful wind swept across the road. The guards at the gate looked up. Their eyes widened. One of them nearly dropped his spear. Red hair. That chakra. No way. The name spread through the village like wildfire. Kushina Uzumaki had returned. Far away, Obito watched Konoha through a surveillance jutsu. For the first time in years, uncertainty entered his heart. Part of him wanted to stay hidden. Another part wanted answers. Because if Kushina was alive, then perhaps some parts of his old life were not completely lost after all. And deep within Konoha, an unsuspecting Naruto Uzumaki was about to meet the mother he believed he'd never know. The news spread through Konoha faster than a fire in dry grass. Kushina Uzumaki was alive. Villagers crowded the streets. Shinobi rushed across rooftops. The Hokage Tower became a storm of confusion. Inside his office, Hiruzen Sarutobi stared at the woman sitting across from him. For a long moment neither spoke. Finally Hiruzen sighed. I never thought I'd see you again. Kushina's eyes remained cold. Neither did I. The old Hokage noticed the anger beneath her calm expression. A dangerous anger. Not the rage of a warrior. The rage of a mother. Where is Naruto? The question hit like a kunai. Hiruzen knew there was no avoiding it now. Meanwhile, Naruto was busy arguing with a ramen vendor over an extra serving. Come on, old man. Just one bowl. No. Half a bowl. No. 3 noodles. The vendor laughed. Definitely no. Naruto dramatically collapsed onto the counter. Life felt normal. Until Iruka suddenly appeared. Naruto. The seriousness in his voice made Naruto sit up. What happened? Iruka looked unusually nervous. The Hokage wants to see you. Naruto immediately groaned. What did I do this time? Nothing. Then why does everyone look like somebody exploded the academy? Iruka hesitated. I think you should come. Back in the Hokage Tower, Kushina stood near the window. Her heart raced. She had imagined this moment thousands of times during the journey home. Yet now she felt terrified. What if he hated her? What if 12 years was too much? What if she had already failed him? A knock came at the door. Then another. The door opened. Naruto walked inside, complaining. Old man, if this is about the paint on the monument, technically speaking it was artistic expr. He stopped. His eyes landed on the red-haired woman. Silence. The room seemed to freeze. Naruto didn't know why. He had never seen her before. Yet something felt strangely familiar. The color of her hair. The warmth in her eyes. The way she looked at him. Like he was the most important person in the world. Kushina felt tears forming immediately. He looked so much like Minato. But the whisker marks. The stubborn expression. The bright blue eyes. Her son. Naruto frowned. Who are you? The words shattered her heart. Of course he didn't know. How could he? Slowly she stepped forward. Her voice trembled. My name is Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto blinked. The surname caught his attention. Wait. Kushina swallowed. Then whispered the words she had waited 12 years to say. I'm your mother. Everything stopped. Naruto stared. The room vanished. The sounds vanished. Even his thoughts vanished. Mother. The word barely existed in his life. For years he had wondered. For years he had imagined. For years he had dreamed. And now someone stood before him claiming to be exactly that. Naruto laughed nervously. This is some kind of joke, right? Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. The silence told him everything. The smile disappeared from his face. His hands began shaking. You. His voice cracked. You mean it? Kushina nodded. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Naruto suddenly felt angry, confused, happy, terrified. Every emotion collided at once. Then where were you? The question exploded out of him. Years of pain behind every word. Where were you when everyone hated me? Tears filled his eyes. Where were you when I was alone? Kushina didn't defend herself. Didn't argue. Didn't make excuses. Instead she crossed the room and hugged him. Naruto froze. Nobody had ever hugged him like that. Not out of pity. Not out of obligation. Out of love. Pure and unconditional. Kushina cried openly. I'm sorry. Naruto's defenses shattered. For the first time in his life, he cried in someone's arms. Not as a ninja. Not as a Jinchuriki. Just as a son. Outside the office, several shinobi quietly stepped away from the door, giving them privacy. Even Hiruzen looked away. Some moments belonged only to family. And far away in the shadows, Obito watched through a surveillance jutsu. His single Sharingan reflected the image of mother and son reunited. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. A reminder of the boy he used to be. The boy who once dreamed of protecting people. The boy who had admired Minato and Kushina. The boy named Obito Uchiha. The reunion lasted hours. For the first time in his life, Naruto listened to stories about his parents. Not legends. Not rumors. Real stories. Kushina told him how she met Minato Namikaze. How he rescued her as a child. How he fell in love with her fiery personality. How excited they were when they learned Naruto was coming. Naruto listened without interrupting. Every word felt precious. Like finding pieces of a life that had been stolen from him. Then Kushina asked a simple question. Where do you live? Naruto smiled. My apartment. Kushina nodded. Show me. An hour later they stood in front of Naruto's small apartment. The moment Kushina entered, her expression changed. The room was tiny. Worn down. Barely maintained. Expired food sat in cupboards. The refrigerator looked nearly empty. The loneliness was visible in every corner. Kushina slowly walked through the apartment. Each step made her angrier. Not because Naruto was poor. Because he had been abandoned. The son of the fourth Hokage. The child who carried the 9 tails for the village. Living like this. Naruto scratched his head. Not much, right? Kushina didn't answer immediately. Instead she placed a hand on his shoulder. You deserved better. Naruto looked away. He didn't know how to respond. That evening, Kushina began investigating. What she found disturbed her. Records had been sealed. Financial support meant for Naruto had mysteriously disappeared. Information about his parentage had been classified. Very few people even knew he was Minato's son. Some decisions made sense. Protecting him from enemies. Keeping him safe. But other decisions did not. Not at all. The deeper she looked, the darker things became. Late that night, Kushina entered an old storage archive beneath the Hokage Tower. Dust covered ancient documents. Most shinobi didn't even know the archive existed. Yet Kushina knew exactly where to search. She had once lived in this village. She knew its secrets. Hours passed. Then she found something. A hidden report. A report discussing Naruto shortly after the 9 Tails attack. Her eyes narrowed. Several influential figures had argued against publicly revealing Naruto's heritage. Others suggested distancing him politically. Some feared Minato's legacy would shift the balance of power among clans. The documents weren't proof of a conspiracy. But they revealed uncomfortable truths. Naruto had become a political problem. A child caught in the middle of adult decisions. Kushina folded the papers carefully. Someone was going to answer for this. Meanwhile, far outside Konoha, Obito sat alone. The image of Naruto and Kushina haunted him. He hated it. Because part of him felt relieved. Relieved that Naruto finally had family. Relieved that Kushina was alive. Yet those feelings conflicted with everything he had become. The world he planned to create required detachment. No regrets. No emotional ties. And yet, for the first time in years, doubts appeared. Small cracks in the armor surrounding his heart. Zetsu noticed immediately. You've been distracted. Obito remained silent. Are you thinking about Kushina? Still silence. That was answer enough. The next morning, Konoha woke to shocking news. Kushina Uzumaki had formally demanded access to classified records regarding the Nine Tails attack, Naruto's upbringing, root activities, decisions made after Minato's death. The request caused panic among several elders, especially one man, Danzo Shimura, because Kushina was asking questions nobody had dared ask for 12 years. And she was getting closer to answers. Very dangerous answers. As Danzo looked out his office window, he spoke quietly. Keep an eye on her. Unknown to him, Kushina had already sensed the spies. And unlike 12 years ago, she wasn't alone anymore. Naruto Uzumaki stood at her side. The morning sun had barely risen when Naruto woke to an unfamiliar smell. Food. Actual food. Not instant ramen. Not cup noodles. Real food. Naruto practically launched himself out of bed. In the kitchen, Kushina stood wearing an apron, cooking while humming softly. For a moment Naruto simply stared. It felt unreal. Like a dream he was afraid to wake from. Kushina glanced over her shoulder. You're staring. Naruto immediately looked away. I wasn't. You definitely were. I was looking at the food. Kushina laughed. The sound filled the apartment with warmth. For the first time in years, the room felt like a home. Later that day, Kushina took Naruto into the forest outside Konoha. We're training. Naruto grinned. Finally. The grin lasted exactly 5 minutes. Then training began. And Naruto discovered that his mother was terrifying. Again. I already did it. Again. I've done it 50 times. Good. Do 50 more. Naruto groaned. Kushina smiled. Minato had always called her training methods aggressively motivational. Hours passed. As the sun climbed higher, Naruto's progress became obvious. His chakra control improved rapidly. His shadow clones lasted longer. His stamina increased. Kushina watched carefully. She wasn't just training a shinobi. She was preparing her son for dangers ahead. Because her investigation was uncovering enemies. Powerful enemies. Back in Konoha, Danzo sat in a dark room beneath the village. The headquarters of Root remained hidden from most of Konoha. Even now, masked operatives moved silently through underground corridors. One shinobi knelt before him. Kushina Uzumaki continues her investigation. Danzo frowned. How much has she discovered? Unknown. That answer annoyed him. Kushina was dangerous. Not because of her strength. Because she asked questions. And questions had a habit of uncovering buried truths. That evening, Kushina visited old contacts. Some were retired shinobi. Some were former Anbu. Others simply owed favors to the Uzumaki clan. Piece by piece, a picture emerged. After Minato's death, power inside Konoha had fragmented. Various factions pursued their own interests. Some genuinely believed they were protecting the village. Others pursued influence, control, authority. And Naruto had been caught in the middle. Meanwhile, a masked figure watched from afar. Obito, hidden among distant trees, observing. He had expected Kushina to focus on Naruto. Instead, she was dismantling years of secrets. The situation was becoming unpredictable. Something he disliked. Yet every time he considered eliminating her, memories resurfaced. A younger Kushina laughing. Minato smiling. Team Minato together. The past refused to stay buried. That night, Naruto and Kushina sat on the apartment roof. The village lights twinkled below. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Naruto asked quietly, "What was Dad really like?" Kushina smiled. The question brought both joy and sadness. "Your father was brilliant." Naruto nodded. Everyone said that. But he wasn't perfect. Naruto blinked. He wasn't. Kushina laughed. Not even close. She spent the next hour telling embarrassing stories about Minato. Stories no history book would ever record. Naruto laughed so hard he nearly fell off the roof. For once, Minato wasn't the legendary fourth Hokage. He was simply Dad. Far below them, hidden in the shadows of the village, several Root agents observed the apartment. One quietly activated a communication seal. Kushina is with Naruto. A voice replied. Continue surveillance. The agent nodded, unaware that red chakra chains were already forming behind him. Kushina had sensed them hours ago. And she was done being watched. The chain shot forward like lightning. The root operative barely had time to react before finding himself pinned to a tree. His partner suffered the same fate seconds later. Kushina landed silently in front of them. Her eyes glowed with anger. Tell Danzo something for me. The agents remained silent. Kushina smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Tell him I'm coming. Deep beneath Konoha, Danzo opened a message scroll. His expression darkened as he read it. For the first time in years, someone had openly challenged him. Not politically, not indirectly, personally. And that someone was Kushina Uzumaki. The storm gathering over Konoha was no longer approaching. It had arrived. The message reached Danzo before dawn. 3 words burned across the scroll. I'm coming. Kushina. The old war hawk stared at the parchment in silence. Around him, root operatives waited. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because everyone in the room understood exactly who Kushina Uzumaki was. A woman who once restrained the 9 tails with her chakra chains. A woman who survived death itself. And now, a furious mother. The next morning, Naruto found Kushina standing by the window. She looked calm. Too calm. Naruto had learned enough in the last few weeks to know that was dangerous. Mom. Kushina turned. Morning. You're planning something. She smiled. I have no idea what you're talking about. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You definitely are. Maybe. Naruto groaned. That answer confirmed everything. At the Hokage Tower, an emergency council meeting had been called. Inside the chamber sat Hiruzen Sarutobi, Kakashi Hatake, Jiraiya, clan representatives from Konoha. The atmosphere felt tense. Jiraiya leaned against a wall. She's serious. Nobody argued. Because everyone knew she was. The question wasn't whether Kushina would confront Danzo. The question was what would happen afterward. Meanwhile, Kushina headed underground. Alone. Or so it appeared. Unknown to her, Naruto had secretly followed. And unknown to Naruto, Kakashi was following both of them. And unknown to Kakashi, Jiraiya was following everyone. It was becoming a very crowded covert operation. Deep beneath Konoha, Kushina arrived at a hidden root entrance. The guards barely had time to react. Crimson chains erupted from the ground. The entrance exploded. Stone shattered. Dust filled the corridor. Root alarms immediately activated. For several seconds chaos erupted underground. Then silence returned. A figure slowly walked through the smoke. Kushina. Still completely unharmed. Danzo. Her voice echoed through the tunnels. I'm done waiting. Far inside Root headquarters, Danzo stood from his chair. The confrontation he had hoped to avoid was finally here. Around him, elite operatives prepared for battle. Danzo looked toward the entrance. Leave. The agents hesitated. My lord, leave. One by one they obeyed. Because Danzo understood something important. If Kushina truly wanted a fight, hundreds of Root shinobi wouldn't stop her. They would simply become casualties. Kushina eventually reached the central chamber. The massive underground room fell silent. Danzo stood waiting. For a long moment they simply looked at one another. Years of history hung between them. Finally Kushina spoke. Why? Danzo remained calm. Why what? Why was Naruto abandoned? The question struck harder than any attack. Danzo's expression didn't change. He wasn't abandoned. Kushina laughed. It was a cold sound. A child growing up alone. Hated. Isolated. She took a step forward. You call that protection? Danzo met her gaze. The village had just survived disaster. Naruto was a baby. The 9 tails was inside him. He was Minato's son. He was a strategic asset. The words echoed through the chamber. For several seconds silence followed. Then Kushina's chakra exploded. The walls cracked instantly. The floor fractured beneath her feet. Asset. Her voice trembled with fury. You called my son an asset. Outside the chamber, hidden behind a broken wall, Naruto heard everything. Every word, every excuse, every justification. His fists clenched. Years of loneliness suddenly had names. Faces. Decisions. People. And for the first time he understood something. None of it had been his fault. Back inside, Danzo remained unmoved. The village survived. At what cost? The greater good often requires sacrifice. Kushina's eyes narrowed. No. The chains around her began glowing brighter. The greater good requires responsibility. Then suddenly another voice echoed through the chamber. She's right. Everyone froze. A new figure stepped from the shadows. White hair. Red vest. A familiar grin. Jiraiya. Moments later Kakashi arrived as well. Then Hiruzen. The confrontation had become impossible to contain. Years of secrets were finally reaching the surface. And hidden far away, watching through a distant Sharingan, Obito whispered. The village is beginning to crack. For the first time in years, even he didn't know what would happen next.